Rail's boots echoed loudly on the cold metal floor of the abandoned space station. The lights flickered, casting strange shadows across the walls. Smoke hung in the air, thick and heavy, carrying the smell of burned circuits and scorched metal. Somewhere in the distance, a low growl rolled through the corridors, followed by a sharp clatter. Rail froze, listening. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. Every movement counted now. A small whimper came from a dark corner. Rail's eyes adjusted, and he saw her, a girl no older than 10, crouched behind a fallen crate. Her wide eyes glimmered with fear. She trembled as the shadows of monsters moved past her hiding spot. They were enormous, taller than any human, with jagged claws and glowing red eyes. Their bodies were covered in scales that shimmered faintly in the flickering light. Each step they took made the floor shiver. 20 of them circled the area, hunting, sniffing, and searching. Rail's pulse raced. He had faced danger before, but nothing like this. These creatures were relentless, intelligent, and extremely fast. A direct fight would be suicide. But the girl's mother had called him across the galaxy, begging him to save her. "Rail, please, you are our only hope," she had said, desperation cracking her voice. And now the hope rested entirely on him. He couldn't fail. He crouched low, pressing himself against the wall. His fingers brushed the handle of his plasma knife, his other hand holding a small pulse device. Humans were not the strongest beings in the universe. Monsters like these had power, speed, and sheer brutality. But humans had something different. They could think, adapt, and act with courage when everything seemed impossible. The girl whimpered again. Rail whispered, "Don't move. I'm here. I'll get you out." She nodded slightly, clutching a small toy she had hidden in her hands. Rail's mind raced. How could he get her out without alerting the monsters? He scanned the area and noticed a maintenance vent running along the ceiling. It was narrow, but it would allow him to move above the monsters unseen. Taking a deep breath, he leapt and grabbed the vent's edge, pulling himself into the darkness above. The shadows of the monsters shifted below him. He could see them sniff the air, listen for sounds, and adjust their movements. They were clever hunters. Any mistake and the girl would be lost. Rail tightened his grip on the vent ladder, feeling the cold metal against his palms. Humans could survive, but only if they were smart and careful. He crawled forward slowly, inch by inch, keeping his body low. One of the monsters paused, its glowing eyes scanning directly under the vent. Rail froze, holding his breath. The creature sniffed the air, tilted its head, and then moved on. He exhaled silently. The girl's small figure below seemed fragile, almost unreal, surrounded by so much danger. He knew he had to act fast. Rail checked his pulse device. A small electrical charge could temporarily freeze one monster at a time. He had to use it carefully. Dropping it near the closest creature, he activated it. A surge of light shot out, and the monster stiffened, unable to move for a few critical seconds. That was enough. Rail swung down from the vent, landing silently behind another monster. He pressed the pulse device against its back, freezing it in place. The girl watched him with wide eyes, trembling but fascinated. Who are you?" she whispered. "Someone who doesn't let monsters win," Rail said softly, glancing at her. "Stay close and don't make a sound." He pulled her behind him as he moved. Every step was calculated. He could hear the other monsters shifting, their claws scraping the metal floor. They communicated with each other through hisses and low growls, making them even more dangerous. Rail knew he couldn't fight them all at once. He had to lure them into traps he set along the way. Small magnetic charges and gravity fields could trip or slow down the monsters long enough for them to escape. The girl clung to him as they moved, her small hands gripping his uniform. She was terrified, but Rail saw something else in her eyes: trust. Trust that he would keep her alive. That trust gave him strength. He had faced danger before, but protecting someone else gave him a courage deeper than fear. Humans had this strange, stubborn strength. They could face impossible odds and survive. Rail ducked through a broken doorway, pressing the girl against the wall. 2 monsters entered the corridor, sniffing the air. He activated a small device, and the floor beneath the monsters surged with electricity. They howled, stumbling back. Rail seized the moment, pulling the girl along as they ran down the corridor. The metallic clang of his boots echoed behind them, but the monsters were momentarily slowed. They reached a junction. Rail paused, listening. The monsters were regrouping, circling, their glowing eyes scanning the darkness. He spotted another vent above. It was a risky move, but it was their best chance. Helping the girl climb, he whispered, "Almost there, hold on tight." She grabbed his arm, and together they climbed into the narrow vent. The monsters below roared in frustration, sensing that their prey had slipped away. Rail crawled silently, careful not to alert them. The girl pressed against his back, trembling. You're amazing," she whispered. Rail allowed himself a small, tired smile. "Humans survive, because we try even when it seems impossible," he said. The vent led to a maintenance hatch near an emergency escape corridor. If they could reach it, they might make it to a shuttle and leave the station. But the monsters were still hunting, and one wrong move could end everything. Rail adjusted his grip, ready to act, knowing that each second mattered. Every human instinct he had was focused on one goal: getting the girl out alive. Above them, the lights flickered again. The shadows below shifted. Rail took a deep breath. Humans were small, fragile, and easily hurt. But humans were also clever, determined, and brave. And Rail was determined to prove that tonight, even against 20 monsters, humans could survive and protect what mattered most. Rail pressed the girl close as they crawled through the narrow maintenance vent. Below, the monsters were moving faster now. Their red eyes glowed through the darkness, scanning, sniffing, listening for the faintest sound. Every movement of the vent shook slightly under Rail's weight, and he knew one mistake could give them away. The girl's small hands clung to his back, her fear evident, but she stayed silent. Rail whispered, "Almost there, stay calm." The vent turned sharply, leading to a panel that opened into a long corridor. Rail peeked through the vent's opening. The monsters had split into small groups, searching in patterns that suggested intelligence. They didn't just attack blindly, they coordinated. His mind raced. A direct confrontation would be suicide. He had to think fast. He scanned the corridor. Broken pipes hung from the ceiling. Loose wires ran along the walls. Every detail was an opportunity. Rail picked up a small metal rod from the vent floor and wrapped a wire around it, creating a simple improvised trap. He dropped it near one of the smaller monsters. As the creature stepped on it, sparks flew and its leg twitched in shock. It roared, staggering, giving him the precious seconds he needed. The girl whispered, "Can you really fight them?" Rail glanced at her. "I don't fight like they fight. Humans survive because we are smart, not because we are stronger." He gripped her hand gently. "I'll protect you. You just need to stay close and trust me." He led her out of the vent, landing silently behind a toppled wall panel. Two monsters were close, sniffing the air, their claws scraping against the metal floor. Rail activated a small pulse device he carried. A jolt surged from the device into the floor, freezing the nearest creature for a few seconds. Its roar echoed in the hall as it tried to move. That was enough. Rail grabbed the girl's hand, pulling her forward, ducking behind a pile of crates. The monsters were relentless. They moved faster now, their eyes glowing brighter, scanning for them. Rail knew the only way to survive was to stay ahead, to use the environment. He grabbed a loose pipe, rattling it along the floor behind them. The noise drew the attention of one monster. It turned and charged, but as it lunged, Rail triggered a magnetic trap he had set along the wall. The monster stumbled, claws sliding against the metal, giving them a few more seconds. Rail kept moving, leading the girl down a narrow side corridor. She gasped, tripping over a piece of rubble. Rail steadied her. "Careful. One step at a time. You are doing great." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but determination in her small frame. Humans, Rail thought, had a strange resilience. Fear did not stop them, it sharpened them. Ahead, a junction led to an emergency access route. If they could reach it, a shuttle might be waiting. But the monsters were spreading, blocking exits, predicting the path they were taking. Rail's mind raced. He noticed a pile of broken panels above one of the corridors. He nudged the girl into hiding behind it and climbed silently, using it as a vantage point. From above, he could see the monsters moving below. Some were sniffing the air, others were communicating through clicks and growls. Their intelligence was frightening, but Rail noticed something. They moved in patterns. They were clever but predictable in their strategy. That was the edge humans had. Using a small pulse device again, he froze one of the nearest monsters just long enough for them to slip through another doorway. The girl's voice trembled. "They are coming back." "They always come back," Rail said quietly, not taking his eyes off the monsters. "But humans, we always find a way. We survive when it seems impossible." He crawled forward, dropping small magnetic traps in their path. Sparks flashed as monsters tripped, staggered, and roared. Each delay bought them a few precious seconds, and seconds were everything. They moved into a service corridor, narrow and dimly lit. Rail pushed the girl forward, then paused. He could hear heavy claws on the floor behind them. The monsters were getting closer. One of them stepped into a trap. Metal plates swung down from the ceiling, pinning it against the wall. The girl gasped. It can't move? Rail shook his head. Just for a little while. It will be okay, but it will slow them down. That's what matters now. He led her further into the corridor, ducking under pipes and leaping over broken floors. The monsters were relentless, but so were they. Humans had courage that no monster could predict. They reached another junction. Rail paused, listening. He could hear the low growls and scraping claws of the monsters as they tried to flank them. He motioned the girl to crouch behind a low panel. Taking a deep breath, he set another pulse trap along the corridor and waited. One of the monsters stepped into it. A jolt surged through its body, freezing it instantly. Rail grabbed the girl's hand and ran past it, her small feet scrambling on the metal floor. Finally they saw the exit, the airlock leading to the escape corridor. The monsters were closing in, but Rail had one last trick. He threw a small device into the corridor behind them. A bright flash lit the area, confusing the monsters, making them hesitate. That hesitation gave them the edge they needed. Rail pushed the girl forward, through the airlock and into the emergency corridor. The monsters roared in frustration, pounding the floor behind them. But for the first time Rail allowed himself to breathe. The girl was alive. She was safe for now. He glanced at her pale, trembling face. Her small hands clutched his arm. I thought they would get me, she whispered. They almost did, Rail said quietly, trying to sound calm. But humans, we survive. Even when the odds are impossible, we survive. And I will make sure you are safe. The girl's eyes shone with trust and a spark of hope. Rail realized that humans had something no monster could ever understand. Not strength, not speed, but courage, ingenuity, and the will to protect those who could not protect themselves. As they moved down the corridor toward the shuttle waiting at the end, Rail felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and determination. The monsters were still out there, still hunting, but he had given them a fight they would not forget. Humans were small, fragile, and mortal, yet capable of incredible things. Tonight he had proven it once again. And as the girl clung to his back, whispering thanks in her small voice, Rail knew that the monsters had underestimated humans, and that humans would always find a way to survive no matter what. Rail led the girl through the emergency corridor, her small hands gripping his arm tightly. The air was heavy with smoke and heat from earlier explosions, and the metallic floor vibrated with the distant footsteps of the monsters still hunting them. Every breath was a sharp reminder that time was running out. He glanced at her pale face, and though fear showed in her eyes, there was a glimmer of trust. Humans, he thought, could face almost anything if they believed they had a chance. The corridor twisted and narrowed, forcing them to move single file. Rail scanned each junction, listening for sounds, sniffing the air for danger. One wrong step could alert the monsters. The girl whispered, "They're close, aren't they?" "Yes," Rail said quietly, keeping his voice calm. "But we're close too. Stay low, stay quiet, and we'll make it." Ahead, he could see a door marked Escape Shuttle Bay. It was their only chance. The monsters were getting faster, their growls closer. Rail knew they would reach the corridor in seconds if he didn't act. He motioned for the girl to crouch behind a low pipe and pulled a small device from his belt. He activated it, and a faint pulse surged along the floor, creating a magnetic field that tripped the first monster to enter the corridor. It stumbled and roared, giving them precious seconds. Rail grabbed the girl and sprinted forward. The corridor was narrow, and their boots clanged against the metal floor. Behind them, the monsters recovered quickly, their glowing eyes scanning for any movement. One of the creatures leaped forward, claws extended. Rail ducked, dragging the girl with him, and pressed the device against the floor. A pulse of electricity surged, freezing the monster for a few moments. "Keep moving," he urged. The girl's small legs struggled to keep up, but she didn't let go. Her trust in him gave her courage. Humans, Rail thought, survived not just through strength but through courage, quick thinking, and the will to protect others. They reached a junction, but the monsters had anticipated this path. Two massive silhouettes blocked the exit. Rail stopped, calculating his next move. He could not fight them head-on. Instead, he grabbed a pipe hanging from the ceiling and swung it down, striking a panel on the wall. Sparks flew, and a small explosion caused debris to fall, temporarily blocking the monsters. That was enough. He pulled the girl forward and dashed into a side corridor leading to the shuttle bay. The girl gasped, trying to catch her breath. I can't run anymore." "You can," Rail said, his voice firm but gentle. "We're almost there. Just a little further." He tightened his grip on her hand and encouraged her onward. Humans could endure incredible hardship when they had a reason to survive, and he could see that instinct in her. The corridor opened into a wider chamber. The shuttle waited at the far end, its lights flickering in the dim environment. Rael's relief was brief. The monsters had regrouped and were charging toward them, faster than before. He scanned the room, spotting hanging crates and loose cables. Improvised traps could slow the monsters just enough for them to reach the shuttle. Rael grabbed a cable and connected it to the hull. Sparks jumped, and the first monster that touched it froze, shrieking in surprise. He pulled the girl behind a crate as another creature lunged, its claws scraping metal. Using the pulse device, he sent a shock through the floor, staggering the second monster. The girl watched in awe, realizing that humans could be terrifyingly clever. Almost there, Rael whispered, dragging her closer to the shuttle. The airlock door loomed ahead. If they reached it, they would have a chance to leave the station alive. But the monsters were relentless and time was running out. Rael could hear the pounding of claws on metal floors, the low, threatening growls. He sprinted the last few meters, pulling the girl with him. The first monster reached the doorway just as Rael pressed the shuttle's access panel. The door began to close. One creature slammed against it, denting the metal, but Rael held it with all his strength. The girl pressed against him, her small hands clutching his uniform. "You're safe," he whispered, though he didn't sound completely sure himself. The monsters roared behind the closing door, but it held, sealing them inside the shuttle bay. Rael slumped against the wall, exhaustion hitting him like a wave. His body ached from scratches, burns, and the constant strain of fighting and running. Yet he was alive. And so was the girl. The girl turned to him, her eyes wide. You saved me. I thought I was going to die." Rael shook his head, trying to sound calm despite the pounding of his heart. "Not yet. Humans survive because we don't give up. We find a way even when it seems impossible." His words were simple, but the truth behind them was powerful. Humans could face impossible odds, and when necessary they could endure more than any other species. The shuttle's engines hummed as Rael initiated takeoff. Outside the reinforced glass, he could see the monsters pressing against the airlock, trying to break in. Sparks flew where their claws hit the metal. Rael's chest heaved. The monsters were strong, but humans had ingenuity and determination. That was the difference. The girl finally relaxed, her body still shaking but no longer fighting for her life. She looked at Rael with a mixture of fear and admiration. You really are amazing," she whispered. Rael allowed himself a tired smile. "Humans survive, and we protect those who can't protect themselves. That's what we do." He watched as the monsters shrieked in frustration outside the shuttle, unable to follow them into space. As the shuttle rose above the station, Rael's thoughts drifted. Tonight had been a test of courage, endurance, and quick thinking. He had faced monsters far stronger than him, yet his determination and human ingenuity had kept them alive. The girl was safe, the monsters were trapped, and for now the danger was behind them. Humans, he thought, were fragile. But they were also clever, brave, and relentless. And when it mattered most, they could survive anything. The girl pressed her small hand against his arm. "Will they come back?" Rael shook his head. "They might. But humans, we always find a way. And I'll make sure you're safe. Always." The shuttle soared into the blackness of space. Below, the abandoned station shrank into the distance, monsters still trapped, but no longer a threat. Rael leaned back in his seat, exhaustion finally catching up, but a sense of triumph filling him. He had proven once again that humans, though small and fragile, could survive, fight, and protect what mattered most, even against 20 monsters. The girl curled up beside him, finally quiet. Rael's gaze went to the stars outside. Humans were just one small species in a vast universe. But their courage, their ingenuity, and their will to survive made them something extraordinary. And tonight, that truth had saved a life. The shuttle landed with a soft thud on the mother's home planet. The engines powered down, leaving a quiet that felt almost unreal after the chaos of the space station. Rael opened the hatch and helped the girl step onto solid ground. Her legs wobbled from fear and exhaustion, but she stayed close to him. Every step was careful. Every glance behind them reminded them that danger could still be near. The landing bay doors opened automatically. A figure rushed toward them, shouting. The girl's mother came into view, her face pale and streaked with tears. Her hands reached out instinctively. My baby, she cried. Her voice was sharp with fear, but it broke into relief the instant she saw the girl alive. Rael let go of the girl gently. She ran into her mother's arms, sobbing, clutching her tightly. The mother's hands trembled as she held her daughter, as if afraid that letting go for even a second would make her disappear again. You saved her. Oh, you saved her, she repeated, almost in disbelief. Rail stepped back, trying to catch his own breath. His uniform was ripped and stained, his arms scratched, his face bruised. Every inch of his body ached. But the moment the mother hugged the girl, he realized none of it mattered. The danger, the monsters, the exhaustion, it was all worth this single moment. Humans survived not because they were invincible, but because they were willing to risk everything for others. The mother looked up at him, her eyes wide, almost searching for words. How can I ever repay you?" she whispered, her voice shaking with gratitude. Rail shook his head. "No repayment. Humans, we do what we must. We protect those who cannot protect themselves." He tried to smile, but the weight of the last hours pressed on him. 20 monsters, clever and deadly, had chased them, and now the mother's gratitude hit him like a wave. He had never felt such emotion before. The fear, the tension, the danger, it all dissolved into this overwhelming feeling of responsibility and relief. The girl peeked over her mother's shoulder. He saved me," she said softly. Her voice was small but full of awe. "He didn't run away." Rail crouched slightly to meet her eyes. "Humans don't run from what they must face," he said simply. "We survive. And we protect others when we can." He looked at the mother again. "She's safe now. That's all that matters." The mother's hands trembled as she pressed them against Rail's face. "I can't believe it. You risked yourself for her, for us. My gratitude, it's more than words can say." Her voice broke and tears ran freely. Rail felt a tight ache in his chest. Humans were fragile, yes, but their hearts could carry more than even the strongest creatures could imagine. Outside the landing bay, the sky was calm. The planet's twin suns cast a golden glow over the city. The shuttle hummed quietly, resting safely now, a symbol of survival and human courage. Rail stood, brushing dust from his uniform. The mother continued to hold the girl tightly, whispering words he could not hear. And yet, he felt their gratitude like a weight pressing on him, powerful and real. The girl ran back to him suddenly, holding his hand. I want to say thank you," she said. Her voice was soft but determined. "You saved me when I thought I would die. You're amazing." Rail smiled faintly. "Humans survive, because we try even when the odds are impossible," he said. "Because we care enough to risk ourselves for others." His eyes scanned the city in the distance. There would be other dangers, other threats, but for now they were alive. And sometimes that was enough. The mother looked at him again, a question in her eyes. Why did you do it? You could have left. You could have saved yourself." Rail shook his head. "Humans don't leave when they can help. We face danger because it is right. And protecting life, especially a child's life, is worth more than our own comfort or safety." He paused. "Courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about acting even when you are afraid." The girl's small hand squeezed his. I think humans are amazing," she whispered. Her mother smiled through tears, her face softening. Rail realized then that humans were extraordinary not because of their strength or speed, but because of their heart, their willingness to risk everything for others. They walked slowly toward the city, the girl between them holding both their hands. The shuttle stood behind them, silent and waiting. The mother's eyes kept glancing at Rail, still full of gratitude. "You've shown me, humans are more than I imagined. You've shown us courage that cannot be measured. I will never forget this." Rail nodded, humbled. "Humans survive because we adapt, because we care, and because we don't give up. That's what makes us strong." He looked at the girl, then at the mother, seeing the relief and trust in their eyes. It was more powerful than any weapon, more real than any victory. As they reached the city gates, Rail felt the weight of the moment. They were safe, alive, and free from the monsters who had hunted them. And yet, the memory of those creatures lingered, the red eyes, the claws, the terrifying intelligence. Humans were small and fragile, but they were capable of facing monsters, enduring pain, and protecting others against impossible odds. The mother turned toward him one last time, her hands pressed together as if in prayer. "Thank you," she said simply, but the words carried the weight of a lifetime of gratitude. Rail nodded, his chest tight, emotions mixed with exhaustion. He had risked everything, faced horrors most humans could not imagine, and yet, seeing her daughter alive made it all worth it. The girl looked up at him, smiling faintly despite her exhaustion. "I'll never forget you," she said. "You saved me, and I will always remember." Rail's lips curved into a tired smile. Humans survive, and sometimes, that survival is enough to change everything. He turned to the shuttle, ready to leave the planet once the girl was safe in her mother's care. He had done his duty and humanity's courage had been proven again. As the mother hugged the girl one last time, Rael felt a quiet pride. Humans were fragile, yes, but their hearts, courage, and determination made them extraordinary. They could face the impossible, survive against monsters, and protect those who could not protect themselves. Tonight, that truth had saved a life, and nothing could take that away. Rael stood at the edge of the landing platform, watching the city glow under the twin suns. The air was calm here. No alarms. No growls. No flashing lights. It felt strange after everything he had been through. His body still ached, and every breath reminded him of the danger he had survived. But his mind was clear. The girl was safe. That was what mattered. Behind him, the girl laughed softly as her mother spoke to medical workers. The sound was small, but it carried great weight. Rael closed his eyes for a moment. During the hunt, there had been only fear, movement, and survival. Now there was quiet. Quiet gave space for memories, and the memories were heavy. Across the planet, the story had already begun to spread. A human had entered a dead station alone. A human had faced monsters no one else dared to fight. A human had returned with a living child when all hope was gone. Many species listened in disbelief. Humans were known to be small, fragile, and short-lived. They were not supposed to survive such odds. Rael did not feel like a hero. He felt tired. He remembered the red eyes in the dark, the claws scraping metal, the narrow escapes where one mistake would have meant death. He remembered how fear had followed him at every step. But he also remembered how his hands had kept moving, how his mind had kept working, even when his body begged him to stop. That was the strength of humanity. Not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. The girl ran toward him, slower now, her steps unsure but happy. She stopped in front of him and looked up. "Are you leaving?" she asked. "Yes," Rael said gently. "Soon." Her face fell for a moment. Then she nodded. "You're a human. Humans go where they are needed." Rael was surprised. "Who told you that?" She smiled. "You showed me." Her mother approached and placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "The council wants to speak with you," she said to Rael. "They want to understand why you did what you did." Rael shook his head slowly. "There is nothing to understand. A child was in danger. I could help. That is all." The mother studied him carefully. "Many could help," she said. "Few would choose to." Rael did not answer. Humans had never been the strongest species. They did not have thick armor or sharp claws. Their ships were often smaller, their weapons simpler. But humans adapted. They learned. They endured. And when someone needed help, many humans stepped forward without asking what it would cost. Later, as Rael prepared his shuttle, messages arrived from across the system. Some were short. Some were full of questions. Others simply said thank you. A few were from species that once looked down on humans. Now their words were careful, respectful. Rael ignored most of them. He was not fighting for praise. He was not saving lives to be remembered. He did it because he could not walk away. As the shuttle powered up, he looked one last time at the girl and her mother. The girl waved with both hands. Rael raised one in return. It was enough. The shuttle lifted into the sky and moved toward the stars. Out in space, Rael allowed himself to rest. His eyes followed distant lights as the planet grew smaller behind him. Somewhere out there were more dangers. More monsters. More places where fear ruled and hope was thin. Humans would go there too. Not because they wanted glory, but because they believed life was worth protecting. Across the galaxy, discussions began. Military leaders studied the station footage. Scientists analyzed the traps Rael had used. Diplomats spoke carefully about humans, no longer calling them weak. The word human began to change in meaning. Human meant adaptable. Human meant stubborn. Human meant someone who would stand between danger and the helpless. Rael did not hear those discussions. He was already moving on, answering another call for help. Another place. Another risk. Because that was what humans did. They faced monsters not because they were fearless, but because someone had to. They bled, they suffered, they broke, but they did not stop. Their strength was not in muscle or armor, but in choice. The choice to stay. The choice to fight. The choice to protect. And in a universe filled with darkness, that choice mattered more than anything else. Far behind him, on a quiet world under twin suns, a child slept without fear for the first time in days. Her dreams were not of monsters, but of a human standing in the shadows, refusing to move aside. That memory would stay with her forever. And so would the truth the galaxy was beginning to learn. Humans were not the strongest beings in the universe. But when it mattered most, they were the ones who stood,